Well, to define the fund, you must first define universal service. And universal service is the concept that all Americans should have equal access to communication services. This includes areas of the country that are much more difficult to reach or more costly to construct, such as rural areas of our nation. The Universal Service Fund is a financial pool of money that is collected from consumers, and then it's dispersed through 4 different programs to effectively achieve the goal of universal service. These programs help provide support to telecommunication service providers serving rural areas, affordability to help low-income consumers, aid to rural healthcare providers, and also to support school and library systems for their communication services. The USF charge is an amount on members' or customers' bill that represents an assessment of their voice services. This charge is assessed on both wireline and wireless voice services and required to be charged by telecommunication companies and cable companies that provide voice services. USAC is the Universal Service Administration Company, and it was created by the FCC as an independent nonprofit organization to administer the USF program. Now, USAC determines the appropriate assessment to support the Universal Service Fund and stipulates that assessment to be billed by communication providers for those voice services. Those proceeds are then sent by all providers to USAC, and then disbursements from the fund are then provided to communication providers based upon their higher cost to construct facilities and provide services in their more rural service territories. These disbursements are determined by companies performing very detailed and regulated cost studies to determine eligibility and need. Universal service is critical to provide connectivity to residences and businesses that are in more rural communities. Without universal service, only high-dense areas of the country that are profitable for the very large service providers would receive service. This would create a great divide and close off opportunity and prosperity for the vast rural areas of our country. Residents and businesses living in more urbanized areas realize benefits too, since this enables connecting them to friends, family, and consumers in these rural areas. This was an important factor way back when the universal service concept was formed to provide telephone service to all individuals. It was understood that for all of America to be successful, these basic capabilities must be provided to all. This program is why all of Americans have access to voice communications today, and how many have realized broadband connectivity in these areas as well. Broadband in many rural areas is still lacking in our country, but we would be much further behind had it not been for the USF program. While USF proceeds only make up a smaller portion of our revenues as compared to other cooperatives or independent providers, it has still been a crucial component to enable us to provide fiber broadband services throughout our service areas and at a much faster pace. I am proud that HTC service area touts one of the most extensive fiber networks in the country, capable of some of the fastest speeds available. USF has played an important role in getting us here at a time our communities have needed it the most. And I don't want to downplay the amount we receive. It is in the millions of dollars annually. More specifically, these disbursements to the cooperative help to recover higher costs to construct and provide facilities in the more rural areas of our market. They help to balance the higher cost to build and maintain our networks, to keep rates as affordable as possible, and ensure that we can provide and continue to expand capabilities based on our members' need and their demands. Again, the anticipation of some recovery of those investments allow us to invest at a greater level and at a much quicker pace. This has absolutely driven the progress made in our fiber network deployed over the last 8 years. Well, first, there is a contribution problem plaguing the Universal Service Program. As most of us know, traditional voice services have been declining for a long time now. Also, the allocation wireless carriers are making to voice revenues in their unlimited calling and data plans have decreased. And that has in turn required a much higher USF charge as a percent of voice revenues just to maintain the fund at existing levels. Essentially, higher assessments required on a declining revenue base. This is viewed as unsustainable. And a lot of our discussion has revolved around including broadband or internet revenues to bring a much larger base of revenue to assess the charge on. This would reduce the assessed charge dramatically and provide the fund with great stability to continue to support broadband deployment and evolution. Again, I want to clarify that today, USF charges are assessed on voice revenues, but the fund is used predominantly to help provide broadband services. This contribution strategy has never been updated for the proliferation of broadband and the decline of voice services. Now, the other consideration on the contribution strategy would be to require large edge providers to pay into the fund. When we think of these organizations, they are content providers such as Amazon, Google, Netflix, Facebook, and certainly many more. These companies access their customers through these vast data networks and commandeer the majority of the capacity. However, they contribute nothing to fortify and expand the connectivity requirements driven largely by their use. They receive all of the benefit without any of the cost, and it's reasonable to think they should have some responsibility to offset the costs to the consumer. Now, a brief example of what I'm talking about, the performance of HTC's network is not only about the fiber and infrastructure investments that we have made locally, but it's also based upon connectivity to markets outside of our area. We have to move all of this content and data all over the world, and this requires major fiber and circuit routes to strategic internet hubs throughout the Southeast. The capacity requirements over the last several years have risen exponentially. Not only that, but we also focus heavily on geo-redundant routes to ensure that if certain circuits are cut or fail, other routes can handle that traffic. Now, this translates to increased costs to support capacity and route diversity. And now just think the fact that Thursday Night Football has moved to Amazon and the way members are accessing those games are now across that data network. It immediately takes up significant capacity and requires much larger investments to be made to ensure additional capacity is available for all services and members during those events. And then lastly, there is a legal battle ongoing between a group called Consumers Research and the FCC. This group has argued that the USF charge is unconstitutional. Now, this argument has been ruled on by the 6th and 11th Circuit Courts, where the USF has been affirmed and upheld. This was also true for a 3-judge panel finding in the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals. However, recently, the full 5th Circuit Court took up the issue and ruled just last week against the USF program. This has set up a showdown for the Supreme Court to ultimately weigh in on this matter. Now, it's hard to say exactly what outcomes may look like depending on those legal efforts, but if the USF program is eliminated or significantly diminished, it could have dramatic consequences for rural and small providers, as well as the customers that they serve. Well, we believe the future of USF should exist not only to help offset higher cost facility deployment, but also to maintain and evolve those networks over time. Getting the infrastructure is only one part of the effort. Technology and data demands are changing so rapidly now, and that puts pressure on changing out equipment and shortening the life cycle of those investments. If USF does not exist, there will be less revenues to offset these requirements going forward, and that would put HTC in a more vulnerable position to have to consider additional rate increases on its members to support these requirements, or delay the amount of capital credits able to be refunded to our membership. Those are not things that we want to have to do, but we also must meet the needs of our members as technology evolves to continue to be relevant. HTC is heavily involved on both the national and state levels when it comes to advocacy for important telecommunications issues. We're actively voicing our concerns and our commitment on behalf of rural America and our members, and having conversations with our state and federal legislators. We're stressing the critical importance of these programs to ensure everyone has affordable access to the best services possible. The simple answer is to let representatives hear their voice. Whether it's Columbia or Washington, we all know that our leaders should be listening to what their constituents view as important. And if residents and businesses are silent on this issue, then there may be a swelling sense that it doesn't matter. I know we live in a time where there are so many things that matter and need to be addressed, but part of our effort here is to educate our members more about the USF program and tooling them with additional knowledge to be more vocal about its support. We want to be more proactive in protecting what has enabled great success in our markets and throughout the country, instead of sitting idle at the risk of support not being in place for our members in the future. Our members need to let their congressmen and women hear from them on this topic, but I also want them to know we're fighting on their behalf as well. HTC is heavily involved on both the national and state levels when it comes to advocacy for important telecommunications issues. We're actively voicing our concerns and our commitment on behalf of rural America and our members. Having conversations with our state and federal legislators, we're stressing the critical importance of these programs to ensure everyone has affordable access to the best services possible. I'm Carlton Lewis, HTC, here to connect.